Okay, there we go. Got a couple more people joining. Awesome. All right, it's about 10:30 here. Wait for one more minute. All right, well, I want to thank everybody for taking the time to join us today for our NMA monthly museum musings. We do this every month for those of you who don't know. And they're also, we record them and we put them on the NMA website. So if you ever miss one, you can always go back and watch them again. Next month's topic will be bugs. So we're going to talk about integrated pest management control with at Hastings. I'm sorry. But anyways, I think it'll be really great. I really am excited for today's. We've got Vonnda Shaw. She is the manager at the Ford Conservation Center in Omaha. The Ford Center is a division of the Nebraska State Historical Society. And Vonda is going to talk about everything the Ford Center can do for small museums. So I will let Vonda take it away.
Hi, and thank you for joining me today. Yeah, as Karen said, yeah, we're the Ford Conservation Center is part of the Nebraska State Historical Society. So I'm gonna share with you some information about, whoops, like skips ahead. Wrong button. So I'm gonna share with you some information kind of on art conservation and how we can help the Nebraska Museums. So just for those of you that don't know what art conservation is, I'm just going to kind of give a brief information about that. Art conservation's a time-consuming process that really begins with a thorough examination of an item. Since conservators work across various media, from paintings to sculptures to textiles and documents, we kind of examine the composition of what's being conserved, and it can vary greatly, as everyone knows. Because of this, examinations often involve using advanced imaging techniques. And whoops, I'm having problems here. Advanced imaging techniques and scientific analysis to understand an item's composition, condition, and previous restorations. Art conservation is also about the practical repair of items, where conservators clean artwork carefully by removing dirt, grime, and harmful substances that have accumulated in order to reveal original kind of colors and details. They also address structural issues, such as repairing tears in canvases or stabilizing fragile materials. And if necessary, conservators may also perform in painting a technique to fill in lost or damaged areas with pigments that might match the original. Throughout the conservation process, the goal really is to maintain the artwork's authenticity using reversible methods and materials where possible, and by respecting the artist's or creator's intent by not altering the original work. Conserved artwork is documented extensively to ensure that future people have a comprehensive record of the work done. At its core, art conservation is a practice of preserving and maintaining artworks and cultural artifacts. Through these items, we hope to safeguard the stories, cultures, and histories they represent for future generations. So who do we work for? Even though the Ford Conservation is part of the Nebraska State Historical Society, we want to let you know that we work on more than just Nebraska State Historical Society collection items or Gerald Ford items, as our namesake might imply. We also offer services to private individuals, museums, libraries, corporations, and other agencies across the region. In examining information from the years the Ford Center has been in operation, we have found that we've now worked for people or institutions in over 45 states. And yes, even someone from Alaska. So that was interesting to find out when looking at our kind of statistics. So while I've already mentioned our primary art conservation services involve treatments that vary from simple to preventive stabilization or storage, to complete treatments and cosmetic integration, you should also know that we offer some other services. We also provide technical and scientific examinations in order to better understand an object's composition, components, and materials. We also provide assessments where we produce a written overview of an institution or collection that includes an evaluation of storage areas, exhibit techniques, pest control methods, housekeeping, and any other factors that affect the long-term care of collection items. We also perform surveys that document the condition and treatment needs of individual items in a collection. Reports generated prioritize treatment needs and can be used as a tool for long-range preservation planning. We also do consultations for issues such as material selection and design in relation to collections care, storage, exhibition, and conservation. We also provide emergency preparedness services. Staff are available for on-site response and can provide assistance with the preparation of emergency preparedness plans. Educational opportunities may also be occasionally provided by Ford Center staff. These include tours, discussions, lectures, workshops, and clinics. So how do you actually proceed with using our conservation treatment services? I'm going to focus on kind of the treatment side of things, but you can obviously contact us for any of those other needs that I mentioned, the assessments, the surveys, things like that. But I'm going to go kind of more in depth on our treatment side of things, since that's the bulk of what we do. Conservation work's generally divided into specialties based upon object types. So with that in mind, we would more than likely direct you to one of our conservators based upon their background and training. So here are our conservators. Rebecca Cashman is the first one. She's our objects conservator. Objects conservators are considered to be the generalists of the conservation world, and as such, she specializes in the most types of materials. So she does stuff on ceramics, glass, metals, other organic materials like wood, leather. And then there's Hillary, our paper conservator. She covers the documents, the books, the photographs, any other works on paper. She does a lot of different Bibles, as you can imagine. Then there's Deborah Ewell, our paintings conservator. She's our new paintings conservator. And she works on easel paintings, murals, painted curtains, and other painted surfaces. So back to kind of what we do. So after the initial discussion, if your needs are related to the conservation treatment services, our next step would be to set up an appointment with you, more than likely to bring in your items or to meet with us. At this appointment, a conservator will examine your items and will give you a verbal indication of what can be done to help with your object. Depending on the needs of the object, the conservator might be able to give you kind of a relative indication of treatment costs at this point. I do also want to mention, though, that like if you're traveling with an item is difficult. So if it's a very large item or something that's really fragile, there are other options for us to kind of go through this process with someone. And in a couple of instances, we've completed this process through virtual meetings or just by sending pictures. We can kind of give you kind of an idea of what we might be able to help you with. At this end of this appointment, we then generally ask for you to decide if you would like to proceed to the next step of the process, which would involve leaving your object at the Ford Conservation Center or bringing it to us, specifically if that has been the discussion. Leaving your object will allow us staff time to then prepare a written condition report treatment proposal, and estimate of treatment costs, and that would be a formal one written up. The preparation of this formal proposal and estimate will then sometimes involve additional testing, assessment of damage, and treatment analysis. So that's where we would begin to charge for our services. The fee for this written proposal and estimate is generally $125 plus tax. So on to kind of that treatment proposal. Development of the proposal kind of begins here, and it's where we carefully assess and analyze items to identify any damage or deterioration. We begin our reports with a heading that includes basic information about the object, such as the accession number, catalog number, responsible party, date of manufacturer, country of origin, maker, artist, date of the date of examination, so we have a specific date, name of the examiner, and any other pertinent information. This is followed by a description of the object. The description should be consistent in scale with the purpose of the examination. So for simple objects with minimal treatment requirements, it can be pretty brief, but should contain enough detail to distinguish the object from a group of similar objects. More complicated objects and objects requiring more interventive treatments will need descriptions that are more detailed. Drawings or photographs may be included when they clarify the description. This section for us describes items such as the maker's marks, stamps, construction techniques, fabrication materials, colors, image descriptions, and dimensions. The description usually follows a logical sequence based on the unique characteristics of the piece. For example, composite objects can be discussed by material. Objects can be described approaching them from largest component to smallest, or overall to specific, or from top to bottom. Any logical approach can be used provided consistency is maintained throughout the report. Groups of objects should be addressed individually by accession or catalog number. Auxiliary structures such as frames, stands, or enclosures should be addressed separately if possible. So as you can imagine, many items are easy to describe because we're familiar with them. But it's great to have a method to fall back on when you end up having to describe something like a watchmaker's topping tool that you might not be familiar with. And so I wanted to say, yeah, the tool in the photos is an example of this. It's a tool that's used to alter the profile of the teeth on a watch wheels. So subheadings can be added to address any special qualities of the object and might include dimensions, again, color references, materials, identifications, and other things. Subheadings can also be used to improve the clarity and brevity of the report. The treatment proposal will also include a condition report, which is what I'm going to go into a little bit more in depth on some of the next sessions. So a treatment proposal includes that condition report, a treatment plan, and an estimate of the treatment costs for us. And then on to a little bit more of the condition report. So the condition report section of our treatment proposal is in essence the condition report that most museums use. It gives details of the state of the object and its component materials. For the conservator, we most often present this information in paragraph form, along with details or information based upon tests or analysis we conduct in the lab. That isn't to say that we don't often start with a condition report form similar to what you see on the slide. So we begin this section with the report usually with a one-sentence overall assessment of the object's condition. This commonly considers the very simplified excellent, good, fair, and poor categories that you see. But we really acknowledge that these terms are very highly subjective depending on, someone's looking at something. So like an archaeological object that might be buried could be considered poor, but in the whole scheme of things, we might mark it good if it's actually in pretty good condition for having been buried for a long time, as an example. So they're the reason, because they're so highly subjective, that's why we give additional conditional description information, and it's being really important to have. So for conservators in particular, the report addresses condition problems in order of their threat to the long-term stability of the object. Problems of structural integrity are addressed first, progressing towards problems of cosmetic or aesthetic concern. Information in the report may address those losses, failure, splits, breakage, scratches. You can imagine any number of things. We then also make sure that it has, if there's any historic evidence or alteration, previous repairs, and other things of note, also usually get included in that condition report. So the location of each condition feature should be clearly described in a consistent manner. Photographs, diagrams, or sketches can be very helpful. Deductions about the source or cause of damage can also be helpful. Auxiliary structures such as frames, stands, or enclosures can be addressed separately. The sequence of these should mirror that of the object description. Subheadings here can also be used to improve the clarity and brevity of the report. Well, we may standardize our reports, our condition reports through paragraph form. A condition report can also be completed in a variety of other ways with a simplified form, like that previous one on the previous slide, or with any combination of images or written words combined with a numbering system or marking system. These pictures kind of show you an example of some of where we've done something like that, where notations were used and were of greater help than just a written description used for recording the condition issues. Depending on your needs, you could use like a bullet point system coinciding with a numbering system on images, that kind of thing. It's kind of a common adaptation of the system. Just be sure to denote landmarks for descriptive purposes. And by landmarks, I kind of mean like a point of reference on the item, being like if it's a piece of paper or something that has writing in it, from a certain letter. If you want to describe it from the front, from the back, or from the viewer's left, viewer's right, that kind of thing, by naming a quadrant or some other distinguishable part of the object. A helpful reminder is to avoid terms such as small or large, as these can also be subjective depending upon what you're describing. So, having an agreed layout for your condition report is beneficial, as are defining keywords and meanings in order to keep information consistent over time and with different examiners. Many glossaries have been published that describe the proper nomenclature for specific types of damage on various object types. An example of one for condition issues is that of the Australian Institute for Conservation of Cultural Materials Visual Glossary. It's also good to note that there are visual dictionaries available for item descriptions, such as the Fine Arts Glossary, Webster's Visual Dictionary, or those that specialize in maker's marks. If you're looking for condition report forms, like the one that I briefly had on the slide, some museums are willing to provide these to other institutions. Examples are also found in several museum-related books or publications, like museum registration methods. Some of them are hard to find on websites, but like the Canadian Conservation Institute notes, I think AASLH has some. Other options might involve the use of apps. I know that they're out there. I haven't used them myself, but I know some people complain about them being too expensive, but you can always look for alternative computer programs, such as the Paint program on many computers now, PDF editors, or the notes feature on iPads. And I believe that previous slide with the condition report stuff we did on an iPad, where we made notes on an image, and then we just saved those as part of what we were doing. So then, moving on from the condition report, part of our proposal will then also include results of any assessment and analysis that was undertaken to determine the physical state and extent of damage. Tools used to inspect the object thoroughly might involve microscopes, infrared, or ultraviolet light examinations, color tests, x-rays, and materials tests for chloride, salt, or arsenic contamination. And these are some examples of the images. The one on the left is where we're using an infrared to look at a painting to see some of the underdrawing. The two on the right are arsenic tests that we were doing on some moccasins. So after the description and condition information, our treatment proposals will also include a treatment plan. The plan begins with a brief statement of the treatment objectives and may discuss the treatment approach. Our treatment options are often discussed with the curator and other specialist conservators before the working plan is finally prepared. A step-by-step account of each treatment step proposed should follow. The entries should succinctly describe kind of what will be done, how the procedure is performed, and may include specific materials, equipment, and/or solutions that will be used in the treatment. Discussions of why specific items were selected can be in each step or can be summarized as an overall discussion before or after the proposal. Common subheadings under the proposal section may include time estimates, materials required, costs, and any fabrications required. A reference bibliography may also be added. The tailored treatment plan may involve cleaning, stabilization, and repair using appropriate materials and techniques. Throughout the process, the goal is to maintain as much of the original material and character as possible while also ensuring the object is safeguarded for future generations. Preventive measures such as proper storage, conditions, and handling practices are also integral to the conservation process, underscoring the importance of ongoing care and monitoring. So on this slide are some examples of treatment plan recommendations that are often presented in our proposals. The treatment proposal should receive approval by supervising conservators and the owner or curator before any treatment is begun. The other portion of the conservation treatment proposal that we provide is the estimate of costs. For us, this means trying to determine how much time it will take to complete each of the steps outlined in the treatment plan. The time frame is based upon how long similar treatment steps took for similar objects and calculated according to size or cleaning tests that might have been done. This assessment can sometimes be a tricky thing to calculate, particularly if we haven't treated something exactly like it in the past. In that case, we have to go by our best guess for the unusual items we see. We do give ourselves some leeway in this regard as we provide our clients with a cost estimate with a minimum and maximum total. Our estimates are based on our hourly rate of $125 per hour, with additional costs factored in for materials. For larger projects, it might be equipment rental, documentation costs, and any other costs such as travel. At the Ford Conservation Center, treatments are not carried out until we have received written approval of both the treatment proposal and estimate documents. So to begin the conservation treatment process, we go through a photo documentation process to record the current visual condition of the objects. So you can kind of see some of our setups for that in there. The conservation treatment then proceeds through the tailored treatment plan for cleaning, stabilization, and repair. Detailed notes are kept during the treatment process. Specialist conservators may be consulted and as needed, and the information they provide can be incorporated into the treatment. Any deviations from the proposal are discussed and may require input and approval from the curator or owner. Cleaning is a critical step, but also one of the most sensitive. It's important to remove dirt and contaminants without damaging the original materials. Conservators use customized solvents and techniques depending on the artwork's needs. For example, a painting might be cleaned with a mild pH balanced solution, while a sculpture might require different methods. During treatment, there is an emphasis on preserving the original material to maintain historical integrity. For treatment steps that involve stabilization and repair, importance is placed on using materials that are reversible should they need to be removed at a later date. For repairs, we focus on realigning detached pieces and filling gaps with compatible materials as opposed to creating new parts where we can. Through the process, our goals are to restore stability while being unobtrusive as possible. Emphasis is also placed on preventive measures, including using archival storage materials and careful handling practices. Then, to wrap up the conservation treatment process, the object will go through a final round of treatment photography, and a written treatment report will be prepared. The treatment report should describe how the actual treatment proceeded, particularly where the treatment deviated from the proposal and why. The report should include supporting photographic documentation. It may also include analytic charts, solvent test records, or information on samples that were prepared or any other attachments. Subheadings of reports may include locations of repairs, samples retained, parts replaced, and other items. In most cases, the report should include recommendations on storage, handling, or display as a final heading. Reports should be prepared in the most archival manner possible or practical so that they will be available for the next conservator as well as curators, students, and other museum professionals when it's needed. As art conservators, we can significantly aid small museums in preserving their collections, ensuring that valuable pieces of art and historical artifacts are maintained for future generations. Our expertise in the scientific and technical aspects of art preservation allows us to assess the condition of artworks, identify any signs of deterioration, and implement appropriate conservation treatments. We can provide guidance on creating optimal storage environments, including controlling temperature, humidity, and light exposure, which are critical factors in preventing damage. Additionally, by offering training and workshops to museum staff on proper handling techniques and preventive conservation practices, we empower staff to care for their collections more effectively. By collaborating closely with small museums, we help safeguard cultural heritage and enhance the longevity of collections. So for planning purposes, I want to leave you with kind of a few things. A treatment proposal and estimate for us costs $125, but it's a great benefit for planning purposes. Conservation treatments can take a long time due to our backlog, but with that in mind, there is plenty of built-in time to raise funds to pay for treatments. And then now I'm going to go back kind of to condition reports stuff, and I'm kind of hoping that maybe I can get maybe a little bit of participation on some of these slides. Essentially, I'm going to do a kind of a I'll do that after a brief thing about why you should do condition reports. Sorry, we're going to do a kind of name the condition feature kind of on this. So why should you complete condition reports? First of all, to collect information on an object's current physical state. Are there labels or tags that are attached to support items? You should also do them to track changes, for systematic condition reports can be used to document changes over time. It also helps to determine material changes and sensitivity or identify damages, pest infestation, poor storage conditions, or poor materials. They can help determine if there are ongoing storage or display issues, or to identify if materials or display items need to be upgraded. They can also be used to identify if any object is stable before placing it on display or loan. Is there a component or condition that would suggest that the item is unstable or would not hold up well? Should restrictions be placed on transport, packing, or display materials is what we're identifying. And then before acquisition, to determine if there will be ongoing problems with an item, will one be able to provide the necessary care for the piece if it's acquired? And then kind of another reason would be to document for insurance purposes for claims or damage investigations. So now on to that, name the condition. I've got some slides following that have different conditions, and I'm just, maybe people can, if they can identify some of the stuff, and I know some of them might be hard to see on the screen, but I'm gonna start with this one. Can anyone kind of identify what might be going on with this piece of glass? Does everyone have the ability to unmute? I'm sure.
Yeah, is it getting to the point you're getting some air bubbles within the glass itself?
Kind of. So what this is like, it's hard to see because it's got these little like cracks throughout. It's grizzled glass or glass disease. So some, we see this often as kind of like this white residue on beadwork. But glass disease is a type of deterioration caused by essentially water, the hygroscopic nature and exposure to humid environments causes like the alkali ions in the glass to start forming, like leaching out sodium and potassium because they bond with that moisture in the air. So you kind of are getting like air bubbles in some way, but you're getting bubbles of crystalline stuff coming out of the glass. And so that's what salts kind of get drawn out because of that moisture. So they're drawn out of that outer layer and deposited on the surface. And as that process of deterioration continues, it penetrates deeper into the surface of the glass and eventually may lead to flaking or breaking of the object completely. So it's an interesting thing to see. You definitely don't want it kind of, if you can, you don't want it in your museum collections, but there's not much you can do other than controlling the humidity for it. But it's something that you see on beadwork a lot, at least for us. So on to this. Anything specific condition report terms that people would use for describing these features? So we refer to these as cockling or planar distortions. They're obviously wrinkling or puckering that occurs when paper, fabric, or any sheet of support material dries unevenly. Anyone recognize this type of stuff?
That mold?
Yeah, in most cases that is mold. In this particular slide, it is not. It's something that was deposited on the surface, like a salt. It was in some moisture, some residue left over from after it had dried. So it's a like salt that was left on the surface afterwards. But yeah, often sometimes a lot of things look like they're mold. The one on the right is something that we see much more often, and those are fly specks. They're small dark spots of fly excretion, as you can imagine. So in the condition report, as we be describing this, both of these terms usually would be referred to as an accretion, a solid piece of foreign material attached to the surface of an object. And like I said previously, when we have those kind of glossaries, when we're describing condition features, we have very specific definitions of things so that from person to person, they kind of get described in the same way. So this, which I'm sure many of you have seen in photographs. Yes, Karen. Does anyone kind of, you want to say what this is, Karen?
So this is silver mirroring.
Yeah.
And it's when the silver particles rise to the top of the gelatin and tarnish.
Yeah, yeah.
Usually
So,
from high humidity.
Yeah, high humidity and oxidation causing that silver to migrate to the surface of the emulsion. Yep. So see it a lot, and we can actually, there are some techniques now that we're able to use to actually reduce this. So if you have photographs, there's potential help that we can do for these. Next thing, these might be kind of hard to, I don't have really good examples because it's really hard to get some good images of what we refer to as skinning. And skinning is kind of the removal of the top layer of a material, usually due to physical actions such as fibers being pulled up or removed from something. Usually we see it when it's a piece of tape is being removed from a piece of paper. But it can happen all the time. Like we see it most often because things have been hinged or rehinged and people tear off that piece of tape and you see a lot of skinning on the back. But you can also see it on the front when things are stored kind of together with tape nearby and it damages the nearby object. On to this, which I'm sure many people are familiar with, which is acid migration. More specifically on the side on the left, it's matte burn. For localized matte burn, a term that's kind of for a stain that's created on paper caused by contact with an acidic mat board. And for usually that cut edge of the window mat kind of releases a higher quantity of acidic vapor. So it hence the like darker kind of line around where that window actually is. In other instances, kind of acids migrate from inks or wood backing boards. So a lot of times we will see backing boards that have wood knots on them, and they've migrated through the paper, and you start seeing them on the front, and that's why people bring them in. Now this one is always a very interesting thing because most often it's mistaken for mold, but it's unlike mold. It's actually found on leather. It's spew, and it's referred to as spew. It's a soap-like substance that rises to the surface of leather hides. It's usually found on leather with a really high oil or fat content, and that has risen to the surface to create kind of this white fatty bloom. And it's a lot of people mistake it for mold, but it's like it can actually be removed kind of with a like heat or rubbing. Obviously you don't want to do that with too many objects, but it melts, unlike mold where it can just be kind of brushed away.
On something like that, do you need then something to replace that fat to keep the leather from like, drying out and cracking?
So often what we do is we remove as much of it as we possibly can, and it's just going to continue to happen because of the amount of oil and stuff that has been used on the leather over time. We do have a chemical that we put on it to try and reduce that as much as possible. As far as replacing those oils, the most we actually do is we wax things. So that's kind of that replacement that's not going to penetrate so far. We really don't need to actually replace the existing oils. And in fact, spew comes because there's kind of been too much oil being applied to the leather over time. So that helps. Anything? Okay. And then this one, which I'm sure everyone's seen a lot of, but I don't know how many people like have a reference name for it. It's called a tide line. And the dark line, it's the dark line of discoloration that forms kind of at the edges of liquid stains upon drying. The staining material may have been within the liquid or the object. In both instances, the stain is carried through the edge of the evaporating liquid, causing this characteristic pattern. The embedded material is pretty tenacious and difficult to remove, and often we have to put things on a suction table and apply chemicals to the face and draw it through rather than having it spread out farther into the paper when we're removing it. Another thing that I'm sure everyone is pretty familiar with is foxing. It's kind of this local discoloration of paper, usually appearing as random rust-colored spots. And kind of there's been some discussion as to what kind of causes all this. It may be caused by metal impurities, sometimes mold, growth within the paper, and both of these obviously are exacerbated by high humidity, dampness, and acids. So I've got a couple last kind of wrap up things here, and then if anyone has any questions about specific ways that we can help you, or if you want more information or advice on what we do for treatments or how we might be able to help you, I'd be glad to talk about it. So things to leave you with, just to consider if conservation and preservation activities are a formalized part of your institution, and if they are or are not, do you have staff that support these activities? And if you need help or advice in regards to these activities, please feel free to contact us. And thank you for your attention. So anything anyone has?
Yeah, this is Kevin. I have a couple of questions. One is that we have books and bound notebooks, books that have been published, plus bound notebooks that people kept records in, where the pages are pretty decent shape, like our atlases and that kind of thing, but the covers are shot, and
Yes.
it makes it difficult for people to use them. Some of these items are digitized, so maybe you could use that, but we like to be able to have them available to folks to actually look at the actual item, see it, smell it, whatever.
Yes.
And so I'm wondering if it's worthwhile in that case to talk with you or whatever to see about repairing the covers to A,
Yes.
preserve, and B, make them more useful for people doing research.
Yes, absolutely. This is something our Hillary Lefevre, our paper conservator's done before. She does specialize in books as well. I know we have a kind of project right now where she's rebinding like a whole Bible, the whole from the cover, doing repairs to the cover. So it is something that we have done in the past. Sometimes they can be pricey, but if the structure is intact, it'd be much less. We're not getting involved in the whole case of the book itself. If it's just the cover, we should be able to help you with reattaching it in such a way that it could be used, especially if you want to retain the original. If it's something where you don't necessarily aren't as concerned with that original cover, often we do send people to a binder that might do that. But in this case, it sounds like it's a more historic value, so we could help you with it. Yes.
Secondly, we have some written objects where it's getting harder to read because the ink is fading, and it's the content that is valuable in this case.
Yes.
Would you more recommend that we get some good scans or good photographs, and then use the name brand Photoshop techniques to try to manipulate the image to try to be able to see it more? Or is there anything worth doing as far as on the object itself, making it more readable?
Yeah, there's not much we can do to help you make it more readable. So yes, definitely get a really good scan of it. Photoshop, you can adjust contrasts up and down kind of thing to be able to help try and pull those words out if you get a good, if there's a nice, decent scan of it. Um, as far as like the original, just keeping it kind of out of the dark is really a good way to try and retain it for as long as possible. But you're even going to have some, dark fading of inks and stuff. It just is dependent. So yeah, as soon as you can, get a good scan of it.
We also have some large sheet maps that have some tears in them. I've sat through different webinars and that kind of thing to say, here's the proper way to repair it. Is it some way that we could have you look at the object as part of your the evaluation, and then say, here's what the types of tapes or this kind of thing you do, and then we could pay for that much and then go back and do it ourselves and buy the materials?
We might be able to help you with a certain extent of that. It just will depend. A big portion of tapes, the problem is we have to use certain types of chemicals to actually remove the tape where we're not going to damage the object, and you have to have kind of a lab situation for that to happen because you have to have the appropriate air ventilation so that you're not, harming your own health. But we could definitely help, like if there are things that are more water, based that could be removed, things like that, we should be able to help you. You might want to send us like some examples of the different types of tape images, but it might be better to bring in some representative samples and we could go through and see what we might be able to help you with.
There is no such thing as an archivally safe tape.
No.
Just to be clear, if you have maps that are torn, it is best to encapsulate it.
Yes.
Or use an L sleeve. Don't try to repair it yourself. Remember, the golden rule is to never do anything that can't be undone. So even like these ones that they sell as archival document tape still leave behind a residue, which you'll have to pay a conservator to remove. So my golden rule, 25 years of experience in the archival world, is don't use those.
Yes. Yeah.
Karen Wagner, who has been is
Sure.
also shaking her head. Yes.
So what conservators use is like a wheat starch paste, and create our own like little repair tapes is what we do. And that's water based. So it's like can be removed with water. And so but even then you have to be extremely careful, because if you're going to remove things, you can create your own tide lines on things. So it needs to be done in a pretty controlled environment. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a crime that like Gaylord and University and they sell those
yeah.
tapes.
Yeah.
Okay. Bottom line is, if we have one of particular interest that has a tear but nothing else on it, which is the case in several of our things, bring it down and you could give us a recommendation as to maybe how to handle it. Some of these things are pretty big, like 36 by 24 might be a small one. But okay.
Yes, definitely. You can even, like I said, send us some pictures and we can give you maybe some bit of advice kind of by, communicating by email kind of thing. But then, yeah, ultimately it's much easier to kind of see the artifact. And if we have to do any testing to like tell you what from there can happen.
Okay, yeah, because we're not talking really old maps, basically between 70 and 150 years. So
doesn't matter how old it is. I mean, we have little, plastic figurines from the, not very long ago that we work on, but they're collectible items. So doesn't matter how old it is, doesn't matter how young it is. Anyone else have any questions or anything?
I have kind of a random one.
Yeah.
The spew that you were talking about with the leather stuff. Just curious, the white stuff that comes up, does it have anything related to like lye that goes into soap?
Yeah, it is very much a soapy kind of substance. It's got this like waxy feel to it. So yeah.
Interesting. Huh.
Yeah.
Man, I'm curious, do you personally have like one object that you kind of remember what that was like difficult to work on or interesting to work on, or and why?
Interesting? Yes. I mean I have
a lot, but
yeah, I have a lot of things, but one of the most fabulous like things that I love that we worked on. But it's such a sad thing. But I guess we helped it a lot. We had this like French Sèvres vase. So it's a 6-foot tall vase that had all these gilded leaf decorations, like gilded pieces that fit on it. The ceramic itself was like 1.5 inches thick. So the vase itself, and it had, in order to set this vase up, it came in parts. So it had a foot, two kind of body parts, and another top part. And when they set it up, they set it up in a time period when they didn't let it acclimate to the temperature of the place that it was going to. And so it came from a cold environment. They set it up into a museum kind of environment where it was warmer, put it all together. So it had this metal internal armature on it. They tied everything down, screwed it all together. And within a few hours, it pulled on it so much that it cracked the ceramic. So it cracked a big, huge chunk out of it. And so that was fun, getting this like crates of pieces of crate parts, because it was a big piece that came and got shipped to us. So we got like, I think it was like maybe in 3 crates, because they ended up having to take all the gilded like leaf decorations and ship them separately to the several parts of the ceramic pieces. But yeah, that was an interesting thing, and it needed treatment on. They decided after there was a problem with the ceramic piece that they would also get the gilded parts treated, because they'd had gilding over like a copper alloy that had essentially corroded through. So the gilded parts didn't look as bright gold as they should be. So that's why they sent us everything. And that way we could treat the gilded parts and treat the ceramic parts, get everything done, get it all shipped back to them, and then they could reinstall it. but yeah, a very memorable piece that we did that was very fun to kind of work on and see. And it was like, it's just a beautiful with like dark ultramarine blue, and it's one of my favorite colors. So it was just like that and the gilding, and it's just, it was lovely.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Yeah, we have 4 of those like deep blue gold set bases in our collection on display and stuff. And so yeah, man, getting to work with one, I can only imagine. Like an inch thick, that's crazy. Oh
yeah.
Thing. Yeah, just wanted to also add that we have actually sent objects to the Ford Conservation Center ourselves. And anybody who would be interested, who is considering it at all, I highly, highly recommend the Ford Conservation Center. We had a teacup that was very important to our original family that lived here and stuff, that just broke right in half. And when it was returned to us from the conservation center, you couldn't even tell. Like, we got it. I went in there with, like magnifying glass and lights and everything, and I could not tell where it was broken. It was unbelievable work. So I highly recommend, even the consultations, everything that Vonda has presented here, I highly recommend. So just from my personal experience from working with you over there, you do amazing work, and you're so fun and easy to work with. So which is really awesome and important. So so thank you. Yes.
No, thanks.
I have a quick question, not necessarily about museums, but I get people coming in, bringing stuff into me saying, okay, we found this, we want to preserve it, protect it. And I obviously recommend them to you because I'm like, nope, that's not what would you say is the best way we should tell them to get a hold of you? Because usually I just pull up your website and say, okay, here's their email. Would you prefer it that way, or do you have a specific email for like non-museum people, or a phone number or something like that? And I just direct them to you, but I'd like to know the best way to direct them to you.
Yeah. We do have like a general email that gets checked. It's not, unfortunately, doesn't get checked kind of as often as other things. There are any number of ways. I don't know necessarily have the best way. I do know that one of the ways that's probably not the most convenient, we have Google Forms that people can send photos in that way. Sometimes it doesn't work. So if I'd say the least best method would be doing the Google Forms that we have on our website, but a phone call to any of our numbers, our main line number is that 402-595-1180, and it's kind of got a phone tree, and it directs you to which conservator based upon the specialty kind of thing. Or you can just get that main number to any one of us, and anyone at the Ford Center should be able to help you or direct them any which way. But yeah, an email to that, or I think it's hn.ford@nebraska.gov. I'm not clear what our actual main email address is, since it gets just checked secondarily. But if
I put it in the chat.
Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you. Since I check it, but I don't email to it, I can't think of what it is off the top of my head. But obviously you can email me directly or any of the other conservators, and we'll get them help. Email is probably the most convenient and most useful for us.
I do recommend checking out their website, which is part of the History Nebraska website. You can go under services and find the Ford Conservation Center. They have some really great resources, like little like helpful preservation guides. They also have some more like success stories and things like that, and kind of an in-depth about each lab too. So if you're a preservation nerd like me, it's really fun to see how they're working in things. And do you still do the blog? I knew like once a month you would share like what you're working on, which
is back up and running. So yeah, if you want to check out some of our newest blog post stuff, I believe the one, I don't know if it's gone out yet, is Gail Jones' little mosaic watercolor thing. That might be like the most recent. And then we've got Rebecca just finished up a drum from the War of 1812 from a museum. that piece that'll be going, if it's not out this month, it'll be out soon within the next coming months. So you can see what was done with the drum. So
Yeah, I love the before and after pictures. They're the best.
yeah.
All right. Well, if nobody has any other questions or comments, we'll wrap it up here. So thank you, Vonda. It was really informative. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much. And like I said, we'll put the recording up on the website, and I'll try to see if I can get some of the other like you mentioned a couple of links to style guide or description guides and stuff.
Yes.
I might try to find those and share those as well.
Yeah, and I can try and get them to you, but it'll be after Christmas.
Yeah. So then I just want to remind everybody that we do this once at the fourth Friday of each month. This is the third Friday because of the holidays. But next month in January, on January 24th, Jessica Noyd from Hastings Museum is going to talk about IPMs, so integrated pest management. February is John Woodward from MPMA is going to talk about crafting a successful breakout session. And March is our conference preview. April is our post-conference. And then I am looking for suggestions or volunteers to do some programs for us the rest of the year. So thank you, everybody. And if you want to volunteer, please contact me for MPMA. And also just a reminder that the NMA convention conference this year is in Alliance. And now I was going to say the dates. It's April
6th, 7th, and 8th.
6th, 7th, and 8th.
The main conference days are the 7th and 8th, but we have our kind of special kickoff on the evening of the Sunday, the 6th. Yeah.
And the call for sessions just went out. So please sign up. So thank you, everybody. Thanks for sharing your knowledge, Vonda. We appreciate it. And everybody have a happy holidays.
Thanks. You too.